Hello, welcome everybody to a lovely Friday morning or afternoon or maybe night, depending on where you are. I'm Dave Darrington. I am your host for Working Out Loud. And once again, I'm really thankful and happy to have you in the audience here today. And we're going to talk about technology that's changing the world and how we go about learning that and how that learning changes the way we do our work. So again, our focus here is B2B software largely, but we expand out to the world. I want to welcome today a newfound friend of mine, and I'm sure will be a friend of yours for what he and his company represents. This is Ashish Rangnekar. And hey, Ashish, can you say a little bit about yourself and welcome to the audience?
Absolutely. First of all, excited to be here. This is going to be a fun conversation for the next hour, so can't wait to dig in. Um, my introduction. So I am my name is Ashish Rangnekar. I am the CEO and co-founder of BenchPrep. Most importantly, I'm a lifelong learner, and now that I look back at my career, it seems like I have too many degrees in varying fields also. And maybe we'll kind of get into that a little bit later in the conversation. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Then I have a master's degree in applied mathematics, and then I also have an MBA. Right? So
Yeah.
you can see the trend here. Like I can't just kind of let go of learning. And today, as the CEO of an enterprise software company, I'm learning from our customers, and these are some of the most well-regarded technology certification companies. I'm also
Yeah.
learning from learners, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I
Uh,
love it.
on a personal note, I would say on this theme of learning, on a personal note, I am learning how to potty train my 18-month-old son, whi- which, Dave, to be very candid, is turning out to be a more difficult job than being a CEO of an enterprise software company.
It's frustrating, and now we know the real skill prep out there. Hey, which should go into the parent space, right? Oh my goodness. Okay, this is great. I want to continue talking about your story through, and we actually have some good stories throughout the session that you shared with me earlier, and I think are probably evocative of the experiences that all of us have had, particularly when we're working in this world of high tech, where there's, you know what? I want to go back in time a little bit, and I didn't actually have this in my script, but one of the conversations I had recently with another leader of a tech company, he explained to me why he was building his product and said, Dave, you know what? One of the biggest complications that we have in learning today for tech and other skills is that we need to get out there in front of people fast. We have to learn so many different platforms. So on average, I think right now the running number is there's 9 platforms. Now I'm talking about like Google Workspace as a whole. Maybe I have Gong, or I can mention a ton of. I might have BenchPrep in my stack. I might have I don't know. It's endless. But imagine 9 of those applications, me alone,
Yeah.
and I'm shifting. And like to this morning, I was in Canva, made that little video that we had. That's a lot, and the skills that require. Now here's the feeling that I, as a end user, have is, sheesh, okay, you're asking me to learn this new software here. And now I already have all these other things, and I'm potty training my son. All right. And now we have to do work. So I think that's the spirit of what we were talking about before. One of the threads, I like to make this punchy statement. If we're not learning, we're churning. And what
Yeah.
does that mean? Right? We as leaders, you as a leader, want your customers to understand your product. We as customers want to understand your product. So I think what we're going to be talking today is this. There's this gap. And this gap is, okay, let me exposition a little bit. I've built certification programs several times. It's so hard, Ashish. You know this. You've been
Yep.
on the other side of this too, like I have. And one of the biggest roadblocks, I think, to success now, we're not talking about, okay, I'm just studying for a GMAT or whatever. I'm just trying to study for, I'm going to use the last company I work for, Outreach, where we make
Mhm.
an education program. People are trying to study for it. Where do I go to study? There's no place to go. So let's start talking about your story. I want you to relate your origin, your hero story, and tell us that moment when you had that first thought, like, oh my gosh, I see the solution. So you got the floor. Well, I want to hear, this is a great story.
Yeah, and Dave, this is actually it's a really good setup. And as you were talking, what I was hearing was that we just have to, as an industry, we have to kind of think about who the end user is.
Yeah.
Who is this modern professional who is trying to learn nine different softwares to just do their job? And how do we actually solve for them? I think I feel like that's the crux of it. And interestingly, that's how my story began as well. So my foray into this space, and specifically the genesis of BenchPrep, started almost I would say 14 years ago now. This
Wow.
is 2000. Yeah, I mean
It
it takes time. It takes time.
takes time.
Uh, this is 2008, and I was living in New York City, working with Capital One Financial, the bank,
Mm-hmm.
doing corporate strategy work, right? So it's very like, it was a non-technology job. We were looking for new acquisitions, business development, kind
The
of
fun stuff.
strategy work. Yeah, yeah. How do we spend more money stuff? And I was looking at my career, and I decided that, hey, I think it's time for me to go back and get another degree. That was my MBA.
Yeah.
And as part of that, I was preparing for my GMAT exam. Now, this job was kind of an internal consulting job, so I was kind of on the road every other week. Um, and when I started to look at options to prepare for the GMAT exam, the available options didn't really fit my lifestyle. So on one end, either you could buy a book, so a $20 book, very affordable, but
Mm-hmm.
the book wasn't dynamic, wasn't interactive, didn't really kind of tell me where to focus on, it wasn't personalized to me, and so on. On the other hand, you could walk into a classroom program with an instructor, high efficacy, but it required me to kind of, again, walk into a classroom
Right.
every Tuesday at 5 p.m. And that didn't really fit my lifestyle. I was kind of traveling every other week. So I looked at these options and said, not really kind of built for the modern professional. Okay. At the same time, if you remember, this is 2008. So Apple had just opened up the iPhone platform.
Uh-huh.
And there were all of these, crazy apps out there. This is the first wave of apps. I remember there was an app where you could like drink a beer, and the level would go down, or you could make some kind of crazy fart noises and stuff. And
We all
there
have those
was one.
apps.
Yeah, and by the way, like there was this notion of like showing off these, like, hey, look what kind of app I found.
Right.
And I remember sitting in a restaurant in Union Square, New York, and I looked around, and like everyone was like hooked onto their phones, showing off these like seemingly trivial apps. And I realized that here I am working towards something that definitely is going to have a step change impact on my career. If I get a good GMAT score, if I get into a good business school, that's a very different career trajectory. And I'm looking for a solution which is as engaging as what some of these apps seem to be, and I can't find one.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first aha moment, where I was like, maybe we should build something like this. And you know, contrary to the stereotype, I'm not a developer. So me and my co-founder ended up hiring a couple of developers, and this is like before even iPhone development was a thing. So we almost have to find someone who then learned how to build apps on iPhone. And then
Right.
in December, we launched the first practice engine or assessment engine on iPhone ever. It was focused for the GMAT exam, and then it kind of took a life of its own. But That's how it started. And
Yeah,
I thought maybe like 20 of my friends would like this, and that'll be cool. It's going to be a nice dinner conversation, a few years later. And we built this app, and then we went on I think we went on a ski trip somewhere. We come back and we realize that there are 1,000 people who have spent $10 each in 20 countries to buy and use this app.
wait, okay. So you expected it to be a coffee table talk, and here you've got 1,000 users who actually now one thing you said in there, 20 countries, $10 a person, an app. And
Yeah.
I think that and when you said this to me before, it didn't resonate. But now I was thinking, Ashish, one thing that I loathe to do is spend money on apps.
Yeah.
I'm better about it now. I'm like, I've got money. What's wrong with me? But there was this time in the moment when I wouldn't. And I think, and in that time in particular, well, we came off the tails of a global recession, right? And these money is a little bit more hard to come by. $10 is a lot. It's even more to get somebody to go, hey, you know what? It's an app. Okay, what? So you struck gold, or at least you saw the first nuggets come out of the mountain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the second aha moment, right? When we realized that, hey, it's not just like me and my buddies who want to do this, who
Right.
want to engage in learning in such a capacity, but there are thousands of people, and now we know there are millions of people, professionals, who want to learn differently. Right? And you're absolutely right. I mean, here we were where most of the apps were like 99-cent apps and free apps
Mhm.
and trivial
Yeah.
apps, and suddenly we found 1,000 people who were willing to spend $10 each on this. Right? And then we kind of dug in a little bit, and we realized that, listen, modern professionals are different. They are more distracted than ever before. They get more text messages, Slack messages than ever before. They're more impatient than ever before. I mean, now adults can't even watch a YouTube video any more than like 5 minutes. They're more overwhelmed. They're getting more emails and they're more busier. And if we are expecting them to learn something new, a new software, working towards a certification or anything, you got to meet them where they're at. You got to engage them differently. You have to think about personalization, gamification, bite-sized learning, cross-device delivery. I mean, those are table stakes when it comes to engaging a modern professional today.
Okay. I've got to go back and say some of these things again, because when you said meet people where they're at, that I think this is one of the things that's escaped us, Ashish. I mean, it's not you because you saw this back in 2008, but the market is in general has been changing for education, and these kind of conversations that you and I are having, I think, underscore that. I want to go meta just a little bit and very short, briefly, because one of the things that people ask me about all the time is, well, what is this thing called customer education? It's nothing new. It's nothing ground shaking, really, in and of itself. It's more of a shift in thinking about how education applies to a busy world in a subscription-based economy, where we go back in time to let's talk about your Kaplan experience or going into study in a physical, we call it butts and seats location, where you have instructors and they have a guide, and that's the way the world used to work. It doesn't work that way. It does work that way still. It can work that way, but we're too busy for it.
Yep.
Ashish, you I like your background and pedigree and your story about you're a lifelong learner. The fact that by merit of going and, hey, I'm going to go now in business. I'm going to go get my MBA. That there's many of us that are like that, but now we're actually thinking about taking that to the micro level, right?
Yep.
I want to get I used to work at Gainsight, so let's put Gainsight up there. I want to get my Gainsight administrator certificate. Why? Okay, that's something I want to get to. Why is it people that are now going, I see this company here, I'm working for this company, or I want to work for the company. Getting there takes a certain kind of a path. It's not linear. Maybe I know that you want to talk about like the phases of your development process. Maybe we flip that But I want to talk to that. Let's go back and talk about that non-linear path to success. So I think that's really relevant right now. What are your thinkings about, or thinkings? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, see, I think maybe like let's touch first upon the macro context that
Yeah, that's a
you
good idea.
outlined. Like why does even anyone care about the gain site or outreach certification and stuff, right? And that is very important, because I do believe that as an industry, if we can acknowledge the macro shifts that are happening,
Uh-huh.
then some of these strategic initiatives become very, very clear. Right? So you see, here is the world that we live in, right? It's no denying that we are living in a skills-based economy.
Yes.
Skills are driving economic activity today. Low skills jobs are getting automated at a pace that we have never seen before. High
Mm-hmm.
skills jobs are in demand to an extent that we can't fill them fast enough. I mean, here we are, talking about recession when unemployment rate remains like, at almost nearly all-time low.
Right. It's
It's a very
absurd.
kind of interesting situation, right? And these jobs are actually more complex than ever before. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We worked with technology companies where they are kind of focused on more multidisciplinary skills than ever before.
Right.
You look at a nurse, not only they need to kind of know everything about nursing, but they also need to know everything about social emotional intelligence. Right?
Right.
You talk to someone in finance, not only they need to know everything about finance, but they need to know equal about technology that is driving finance today.
Mm-hmm.
So these are kind of interpersonal and the thing is like these this notion of like skills based economy, it's not a, a one and done thing, right? You can't just take one class, one course, one MOOC, or even one certification and say, hey, I'm done for the rest of my life, right? It's truly about lifelong upskilling and reskilling. I think everyone kind of understands that, and we are kind of seeing significant dollars going towards this way. The notion that I'm seeing more and more is that certifications are becoming the currency in the labor marketplace.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? Well, as a professional, um, I can watch as many YouTube videos as I want. I can read as many books as I want. It doesn't really give me a real world outcome. And what's a real world outcome? It is being able to switch careers, or get a pay increase, or get a promotion, or even kind of career shifts. But if you have a certification from a verified body, right, and it can be a professional certificate, a certification, occupational license, whatever you want to call it, like a set of alternate credential, but verified, all of these real world outcomes are highly probable.
Yeah.
And I think that has created a kind of unprecedented demand for certifications. Today, we are actually seeing certifications in every industry, every job, every product. Right? And you've been doing this for a long time, so you have seen this shift, right? Like 25 years ago, certifications was like, oh yeah, like if you're in healthcare, maybe you need like a certification and stuff. Today, you see every software company, as it reaches some scale, they are heavily investing in certifications.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? As we move towards a SaaS economy, as we move towards a place where there is more technology, so there are more technology software vendors for kind of a product than ever before. Um, it is imperative for these B2B SaaS companies to think about themselves as more of a customer education world, which is a driver of customer success, which is a driver of long-term customer growth.
You've got
And
it.
certifications are the cornerstone, or are becoming the cornerstone of this customer education framework.
Can I break in and respond to just what you said there, because I thought I want to actually take that, quote that, put that on the pedestal, because I think you're the first leader that I've talked to that has really been able to boil that down into a couple sentences. Because let me flip it from the pain side that I felt as a practitioner and a leader and an educator too, who's been in academics like you have, right? It's we've got a really big problem. I'll go back in time, and I want to tell a short story. I'll try to make it short of and abstract it. So one of my executives came to me one day and said, Dave, can we talk? I'm really excited about this certification thing. And this guy's high energy, and he's an evangelist and a leader in the company, and just all out there all over the place, marketing, right?
Yeah.
Loved working with marketing because of the passion and the energy. But that conversation led to a lot of different things. For me, one, it was the fact that a leader and executive is coming to me, Dave, in customer education about a problem. And that problem is, Dave, I hear this all the time. We got to get a certification. Okay. Why? Why do you think we need to get a certification? Well, because it's going to be a market differentiator for us, because we can say we can be certified in our product, and nobody else can say that. Yes. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere, because if the market that's validating what you said, right? And that wasn't the only case. I've had it's actually kind of fun, Ashish, because here's, Dave coming into the, I'm a decent seasoned professional. I'm not afraid to talk to a CEO, as evidenced by right now. But sometimes you're like, I have this little fear factor of someone I report to all the way up to the top, and they're coming to me and say, we need to do this. And now for me, the analogy is deer in the headlights look, right? Oh, well, how? And what are best practices, and what are things to do? So I went off on a journey to build these things, not knowing anything, right? I looked for a vendor that could build it and deliver it. And I learned all the science behind, and there's a lot of science. It's overwhelming. And then the single most largest problem I've had wasn't building the certification at all. There's people to help you with that. Great psychometricians out there that I can name off. It's how does people practice for it? and why? And that was the biggest problem. That was a complete surprise that derailed my entire program at a point, because, it would be like you saying, well, Dave, this is great, but how do I prepare?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Total miss. And actually that's a bigger miss in our market. Like for me, I need a product or a platform or some tool set that helps me prepare over time. Meaning me and because you just can't sit down and study and go to a class and just pass it. So that is the felt reality, or the felt experience, that my audience here, I hope, is listening in and saying, yeah, we've had that too. It's hard. A journey to build a formal cert, like a high stakes cert or even a mid stakes cert, is a year, maybe two. And then how do you support that and evolve it? So, okay, I'll spin it back to you. I just wanted to bring the pain into the situation.
Yeah. And that pain is real. And I think we get into several conversations similar to this. Right? So you said two things that caught my attention, and I'll touch upon both of them. So first is, like, how do you start on that journey to build that certification, and then how do you grow it?
Right.
The first part, and the example that you gave, where like your executive comes and is excited about certification, that's a great situation to be in, right? Because I think the first thing to acknowledge is that this has to be a strategic initiative, because
Strategic.
this is not like, hey, here is a program that's kind of running on the side. This is a critical piece of building what I consider a ecosystem around your product and technology. And we have seen the likes of Microsoft and Cisco and AWS do a phenomenal job of building this ecosystem in a way where the end user becomes the evangelists, and now kind of the product takes life of its own. Right? So it's definitely the certification program and investing in it is becoming a strategic priority at the board level and at the C level, and that typically I've seen the impetus of actually investing in it. So that's that. Now the point is, okay, you have a certification program, and how do you grow it? And I'll walk through one example of like how it has worked out. So AWS is a perfect example. They actually started off their certification program in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, and in the last 10 years, they have seen really good success on their certification program, where they went from zero to 500,000 people certified in AWS certifications.
500,000. That's an incredible number.
Yeah. And actually, I'll put that in context, right? AWS, which is a huge company, not Amazon, AWS has 50,000 employees and 500,000 people certified in AWS. That's an order of magnitude bigger. Right? So, when a lot of people think about like, let me train my employees, and that's important. That is important. But the certification program and what it can do in terms of just putting your technology out there and building an ecosystem might actually have an order of magnitude, bigger impact. So anyway, so 500,000 people certified. Um, Amazon is an extremely customer-centric organization, as we all know. They went back to these candidates, these professionals who are who are going through those certifications, and asked them, "Hey, what is the number one thing that you would like for us to do so that you can actually continue to be on this journey and get more certifications and so on?" And overwhelmingly, the answer was, give us more practice so that we can actually work towards this certification. And let's unpack that a little bit, right? So, what this meant was that they were sold on the value of this certification.
Right.
They were willing to begin that journey, and they were sold on the ROI on that journey. Because this is not like you wake up and you take the certification, right? I mean, there's an awareness, and there's like a time and money invested in it. So, you know, they understood the ROI, and now they needed the support on how do you go from, okay, I think I want to do this, to I'm getting certified. And
Right.
the answer was practice, right? They said, hey, give us more and more practice so that we can actually be ready to take the certification exam, and see those the real world impact of this.
Okay, so let's get to the practice part. Now, if I go back and I think about the process of building a cert, and hopefully my audience here, like, chime in. I know, Liz, you're on there. I'd like to hear questions from you as well. But building a cert, number one, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Because I'm a customer education professional. Most of the people like me realize, for my audience, and I'm talking to my audience, many of us have come from a different place. We have a background story kind of like you, Ashish. Everybody has different things. Somebody comes in with strengths in testing. Somebody comes in from academics. Somebody comes in from customer success. But our job is the same. We need to get this thing that is our product, because we're somehow subject matter experts because we've lived in it. And now we have to build a scaffolding around it that helps other people understand what we know. Part of that is first developing videos and lessons and things like that. Now we're at a point in where we talk to you as, okay, I've built a cert, or I'm thinking about building a certification. At that point, the gap was I didn't have BenchPrep or anything like it. I went off like I was in a race to build questions and test banks and all this kind of stuff. And I worked with a psychometrician, and we went down this rabbit hole to build. And at the end of that process, we go, okay, well, now we're deploying a test, and people go, I can't prepare for this. I have no idea what, and they were failing. Nobody was passing the exams. And so what I'm thinking now is a better way for our audience, for everybody to think about it. And let's go back to strategy, Ashish, because that is a statement that you made that is really important. I think we talk about education. Education is, and I don't believe this, I know this to be fact. Education is a strategic function that belongs adjacent to your C-suite. And why is for different reasons. It's not like, yeah, you can get anybody to build a class. What you are talking about, what you have seen, what you have built a platform for, is that hug around our customer base filling in one of the final notches, right? Final slots, which is you're going to learn Gains Out, Outreach, AWS, Azure, whatever it is. And now we have a harness to test against, but we also have a place for you to go that's safe, that you can practice and make mistakes, screw up, learn from. Like, the best thing I like to, I got to tell this story real quick. I taught at a university as an adjunct, and I think you did as well. Best experience of my life. Anybody who wants to really understand how to connect with people, go teach, because you will learn really fast how to do it. I built my own app in that class, which ran the whole show. And the goal was to break people up and to have them produce some of the content and get out there. And that experience and learning of like actually being hands-on and I told my students, I want you to fail. I want you to make mistakes, and I want you to feel that that's okay. And that scared them, because I went in and one of my students said, you really can't tell a student that it's okay to fail. But the way I did grading, Ashish, was different. If you did a project or something and you got points for it, regardless, it wasn't a grade, it was points. And we had a leaderboard, and then the entire way that we graded was based off of not even just a curve, like a threshold. Do this much, you get, you're at an A. Do this much, you're at a B. These kind of things are revolutionized how we approach education. The gamification really is a bad word. What we're trying to do is give you practice.
Yeah.
Games, the thing about video games, I'm a gamer. I mean, I'm 50, almost 53 years old. I still love video games. There's nothing better than sitting there with my son, who's 9, who's doing stuff and showing me, oh, Dad, click this button, do this thing. What? It's this visceral interactive, just doing it and practicing. And that's why I'm really glad for this.
Listen, practice makes perfect. When in the professional world, we call it experience, but at the end of the day, it's practice, right? The adjunct experience that you mentioned actually kind of brings back to my time as an adjunct. I don't think I was smart enough to build an app then, but I did few things around gamification, and that was interesting. So just going back a little bit, so this is like in maybe like almost 20 years ago now. I was a graduate student in City University of New York for my applied mathematics master's program. They also asked me to be an adjunct teaching pre-algebra to students with non-business majors, right? So this is like if you're a music major, law major, and if you have to take a pre-algebra or algebra class, I was teaching that. So it was overwhelming experience. I was a 22-year-old kid, and like some of the students I was teaching were like my age or maybe like a couple of years younger, right?
Right.
And like they didn't want to be in the class, so I had to come up with creative ways. And the interesting part was during the evening, I was a student, and during the daytime, I was the teacher. So I had to be on both sides of the table within like 12 hours in a day. A game-changing experience to me. And I remember I actually introduced a concept called daily practice problems, right? So what I was noticing was I would give a lecture and we would do like practice problems and so on. By the time we kind of got to the second lecture, I think kids, either forgot about the one or they kind of just moved on. And I felt like just expecting that, hey, I'm going to give a bunch of lectures and then take a midterm and then a bunch of lectures and then the final exam didn't really feel continuous assessment, or it didn't really feel engaging enough. Right? So I introduced this concept of daily practice problems, which is essentially what I'll do is there's a lecture, the next lecture, the first 15 minutes of the lecture is going through kind of, maybe 5 to 10 practice problems from the previous lecture.
Yeah.
Right. And then I created a little kind of leaderboard around like, how everyone is doing in terms of just their attempts and their engagement and performance. And that created not only a sense of kind of engagement and gamification, but also a sense of continuity, right? So it didn't feel like, oh, a week has gone by between the two lectures, but it felt like there is continuous practice and engagement. And the feedback that I got was that one kind of daily practice problems aspect completely changed the experience in that classroom. And that stayed with me, right? I mean, at that point, I was not kind of thinking about building BenchPrep like 8 years down the line. But when we did, we made sure that this whole concept of practice, it kind of becomes the centerpiece of how we think about the instructional design, and the learning experience and the learner engagement. And this fits really well for someone who is working towards a certification.
I think that's actually amazing, because those experiences, that's true. I mean, we've all been through this academic experience where it's lecture, somehow you're magically supposed to have something with it, and then you pass a test. And what we realize, I think I realized this late, late in my tenure in college and university, where there was a student, a friend of mine in the dorms, and I'd always watch this person every single day. They were so disciplined. And this person they even said to me, I'm not really smart. I just have a technique. And that technique was, they made practice questions, and they made things for them to try every day, just a little bit at a time. And this person, straight A student, and they were the most humble, and they even said, look, I'm just not that smart. But that's helpful. That approach, what that says is that everybody can learn. We can all learn, unless we have some kind of an impediment which prevents it. And then there's great techniques for that. But something I'd like you to really talk about right now is more about your app, the felt experience of it, right? What I'm trying to do is connect an audience to technologies that are frankly groundbreaking and disruptive in a positive way, and help you so let's think about it. I am a SaaS leader. I'm a small company. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm building a cert program. My leader says, Dave, go do this. And I go, cool. I'm so excited about it. But now you, Ashish, are talking to that person who is starting to grapple with the monumental work they have ahead of them. And now I introduce, I'm not going to talk about whatever solution is over here, which is I think one of the things that you are not, at least at this point in time, is the proctoring, all the high stakes technical stuff. What you are is the framework around getting a person to pass that experience, right?
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. Tell me more like the bits and pieces of your organization, how this platform functions to help me and our audience.
So Dave, let me start with why. Like, why does it matter?
Well, please.
And then I'll highlight kind of, right. So this is what that journey looks like, right? So organizations say, hey, listen, for in the SaaS world, revenue is important for revenue. Customer success is important for customer success. Customer education is important for customer education. Certifications are important. So let's do certifications, and that's how you kind of describe it. Then I think the question that companies need to ask is, how do we want to enable our stakeholders and professionals to actually kind of go through this, right? And I think that acceptance is step one, right? So I think the companies need to realize that the professional who is busy and distracted and overwhelmed, how are they going to actually be successful in pursuing that certification? And they need to take ownership of that process. That's actually step one. And the question that I ask is, like, think about this. If someone drives a Honda and something happens to the car, where do they first go to look for parts? They go to a Honda dealership. Right? So if you drive a Honda, you look for Honda parts. If you're working towards an AWS certification, the first place you go is AWS. Working towards Cisco certification, the first place you go is Cisco, right? So I think it's a mutual understanding where the company that owns the certification needs to do more to help the professional. For the professional, the first place to go is that company, right? And that kind of brings us to the point that, hey, okay, what do we do to enable this learner through this process, right? And the first and the most important thing is to offer digital curriculum, digital practice, digital experience for that specific certification exam. I'm not even kind of, the goal should be the broader customer education program, but I'm kind of speaking specifically about the certification because it is a monumental task, right? I mean, again, Dave, to your point when we started, right? This professional is working towards like needs to learn 9 different softwares, right? Maybe 3 of them actually offer certification. If they do, he or she is going to lean more towards those certifications. Within those certifications, someone who actually offers practice towards that certification, it's going to be easier for the professional to lean in and actually follow through. So
Agreed.
this is what we are seeing. So I think so. What we have done is we have a enterprise learning platform that is used by companies that offer certifications, and they use it to build and transform their practice, prep, and certification training solution. The number one goal is candidate success. How do we help that modern professional succeed in that journey, feel more confident, feel more ready so that they can actually follow through, take the exam, um, get get certified, get that real world outcome, and then become part of the ecosystem that this software company is trying to build.
Right.
So with that in mind, we have built this enterprise learning platform, which is completely white labeled. So it kind of fits into our company's tech stack very easily, very interoperable, where a learner can come in and practice for their certification. Right? So it's very assessment heavy, very intuitive interface, heavy on analytics, very
Hmm.
adaptive and personalized to really help the learner figure out what do they need to do, not just kind of everyone else, but specific to that learner. And most importantly, it actually you know, it it supports a variety of modalities, right? So of course, standard assessments like multiple choice, performance based assessments, simulations, labs. When I say practice, it doesn't only have to be a multiple choice question. Practice means like whatever you need to do to really understand how to use the software, and a part of that is simulations, labs, interactivities, but it's all personalized and gamified in a way that actually supports that particular professional and helps them succeed.
Can I ask you a question now that as I hear you talk, I've done your demo too, because I would not be inviting you on here until I knew a little bit more about your platform. So the questions I'm asking you are like more targeted or specific. Um, Something that's just coming into my mind right now is I feel like I've done this all backwards before. And I know that I've done it backwards. When I go to build the certification, and again, I want to try to expand that word certification. In our world, we're starting to talk more broadly about credentialing too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when I say credential as opposed to certification, there's a nuanced difference. And I think this is important. A credential is more like I've done some low stakes activity. I've gone to a webinar. I've gone to a class, whatever. It's just a moment in time, and it's a reward for me putting effort in. So it could be very low stakes. A certification to me, and I'll channel my friend Spirit, my friend, not Spirit, she's living, Debbie Smith, who knows a lot about certification. And I would say that a high stakes in her mind would be, oh no, I've done all of the appropriate scientific work. I've built questions according to a certain protocol. I've tested those questions. I've done the maths. And now we have the outcome of that is the test is good. Okay. But if I start there, I'm just building questions and and that's the thing. It seems almost like I could work with you at BenchPrep and say, I know I'm going to build this certification, but I don't know how to build questions. It's going to be 2 years until I have this done, or a year, or 8 months. Could I work with you and start building to that so my learners are already practicing, maybe even in parallel to the efforts that I have going on with actually building that certification?
Absolutely. So we see this as a journey where B2B SaaS software companies need to have a very robust portfolio of customer education products.
Yeah.
At one end is this very high stakes certification exam where you kind of walk into a testing center and you kind of take a 3 hour exam.
It's
Maybe
scary.
there is a medium stakes exam, and then there is like low stakes, what I would call them, like the credentials or professional certificates. And the ideal state is having a portfolio of these, right? And
Yeah.
the way we tend to support is you can deliver customer education on us for sure. You can deliver professional certificates on us. We have a very robust assessment platform where we can deliver assessments that are low and medium stakes. We can um, grant certificates. So in that journey, if it's kind of low to medium stakes certificate, you can just deliver it on our platform. And then when it comes to the high stake certification, we play a role of more of an enabler to help the learner kind of prepare for the
Oh
for
my
the big.
gosh. You've connected some dots for me, Ashish, actually, in a way that I hadn't thought about it. So basically, what you're saying is, well, let me say it. As a professional trying to build to a certification program, let's say we really want to do a high stakes cert. Why do you want a high stakes cert? That's a good question. And usually it is, I'll channel the psychometrician that I worked with before. And she would say, well, are you training doctors? Are you training airline pilots? No. We're training somebody who's going to be working on a database and they need to know some things to make sure they don't screw up the business. Now, if that line of, I'll tell this fun story. There was one day I was using a product and I worked for the chief information officer of the company. And I had done something because I was ill-trained and it looked as if I deleted the entire database. And of course, that person came down on me hard, as did the company, because things weren't in place. And really, it was just a configuration setting. That moment would have been avoided if I had gone through the training and because this was a critical business system, but it wasn't that critical, right? It wasn't like, I'm going to end the world. There are apps that are like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there are definitely cases. And the case where I'd really want a formal cert would be, let's say I hired you to be an implementation specialist and you're working for Deloitte or Accenture, really high-end consultancy. You're super sharp, but I want also to show the merit, the pedigree of my company by saying, I have bestowed upon you this formal cert and you've actually taken a really high stakes test. But for most of our audience, I don't think we need that. And it's almost bad of me as a leader to start my program without doing something like an intermediary step where I'm working to actually figure it all out and thinking low stakes first and building up to it. And then what I could do is in parallel, start working on that sort of like the proctoring or whatever. That might be another system. That's not what you and I are talking about. You're filling the gap with your product base on something that we desperately need, which is the practice leading up to the formative experience of a high stakes cert and everything in between. So that actually clears a lot of stuff up for me.
Yep.
And I would recommend a platform like what you're saying. I'm not here to recommend a platform specific. I'm talking about the new technologies that we don't know about. And that's why I'm thankful to have you here to explain this. This is really cool.
And Dave, you explained it extremely well. I think the way I look at this is also, today data is powering a lot of these decisions.
Yeah.
So when we look at learning and assessment, we used to kind of historically keep them separate. Now it's all coming together. And it has gotten to a point where based on the data we can collect on the learning and practice side of things, we can almost accurately predict who's going to actually pass the exam, even in the high stakes exam. So going back to where we started and thinking from the professional perspective, right? Like what do they have to do? If they are busy and if they have again 9 softwares to learn, the simpler you make them to attain the level of mastery and that kind of next level of credential, the better it is going to be. And low to medium stake certificates are an excellent way of doing that. Right? It's also, there is an also element of gamification in this, where they take one step, you kind of give them, you acknowledge and verify that one step, you take the second step and third step, and down the line, as the program grows, there might be some value in the high stakes certification. But I do believe that when I look at the growth coming in the next like 5 years, that low to medium stakes professional certificate world is just, there is so much pent up demand for it. And we are seeing kind of the market move towards that, but there's so much pent up demand for it. It actually fits the needs of the modern professional. It solves the critical needs for that B2B customer education program. It is definitely underserved right now.
I want to put up a big 100% on the screen, because take it from me as someone who's been in the trench, right? Trying to build the programs that you're trying to help with. We haven't had the tools for that. We've had to simulate it with just, I got a Google form. It's a practice. That's a lot of work, right? We've needed a placeholder. We've needed a position or a product in that position that helped get us to the point where we can reach that state. So, all right, this seems to be a natural seg point. I want to do a couple of things here, get us out to our next meetings, because we're all busy professionals. First off, let's do this. Ashish, I'm going to bring up let me go ahead and present the screen. Oh, nope, I'm going to do slides. I want to take people to your website. And where is it here? Where's my Chrome tab? So if people need to find you, you are at benchprep.com, right?
Yep.
Easy to get a demo. I did a demo with you. It was a lot of fun. Fortunately, I know some of your folks there that have come over. Hello to all of you. And anything else you want to talk about? How to reach out? Where you like to be reached out to best, on LinkedIn, or just come to your website? What works for you?
Yeah, I mean, see, please visit our website. That's one of the best resources. This is something that I personally love to talk about. Right? How do we think about customer education? How do you build those professional certificates? How do we, enable learners and so on? So please reach out to me personally on LinkedIn. You can search my name on LinkedIn. You'll find it. You can message me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me on email. My email is ashish@benchprep.com. My first name, ashish@benchprep.com. This is a conversation that we love to have. So I'm happy to share our perspective, happy to demo the platform. Equally importantly, happy to share what some of our customers have been doing. Right? So
That's great.
And Dave, I think one of the things that I would highlight is like, I feel very, very fortunate to be working with some of the leading technology certification bodies, AWS, Computer Technology Industry Association, ISACA, PMI, and so on. They are doing this at a big scale. And going back to that notion of me being a lifelong learner, we have learned a lot from all those implementations. So I'm more than happy to share that with anyone who's willing to talk to me.
And I would say I want to bring that point up. The logos you're working with are big time, right? So that means a lot to me, and it should anybody in our SaaS industry, that if you're scaling, if you're able to help AWS, you're able to help anybody. That's a really good deal. Okay, so I'm on that again. Benchprep.com. Ashish, you're out there on LinkedIn. Reach out. These kind of conversations with you are amazing. I really appreciate your time today, because again, I'm looking to help connect people to technology they don't know about, who are going to help us in the B2B, and I would even say B2C SaaS market, because there's a lot of products out there. I was even talking with a gentleman from Cricut, the device manufacturer that makes, the devices that my kids have, and make all these really cool things. And how many skills are going into that? It's tremendous. It's unlimited to all kinds of things. Okay, so on the way out the door, I have to do one more thing here as well, as I have to pitch our own programs. One of the things about me is, like we've been talking with, excuse me, with Ashish here today, I've done this. I've been there. I'm looking for these products. I see how these are put together, and we see at Service Rocket how to construct a program, the fabric, the tooling, the ideas, the thoughts, everything that goes into that. We talk with people like Ashish here and bring these ideas and connections into your program. So if you're interested in learning more, reach out to us. You can go to servicerocket.com. We have a lot of programs now, and in fact, we are promoting our standard professional and premium programs where we actually take you through the whole strategic journey to understand where you are on a map and where you want to go and get there. So enough of that. Let's walk out the door today. Again, a couple of the things I have to say. This is Working Out Loud. You can see these recordings online. Very soon, we'll have a website for this where they'll all be ranked, all positioned, easy to find. I am at Service Rocket. You can find me on LinkedIn. I prefer to be reached out to on LinkedIn. So with that, anything else you'd like to say, walking out the door, Ashish?
Two things. One is, this was one of the best ways to spend a Friday afternoon, talking to you and talking about certifications and customer education and so on. The second thing that I would say is, like, I feel we are in a very early stages of transformation in this specific part of the industry, which makes me feel very excited. I mean, it's almost like, you're in the second inning of a 9-inning game. You don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of game to be played, and we can really shape this. And
Yes.
that is just a phenomenal position to be in, right? So I just want all of us to think about the power and responsibility we have towards shaping this industry over the next 5 to 10 years.
Agreed. I think I know there was a report out saying the time is now for customer education. The time is now to bring all these things together. We can help. So just reach out to us. And with that, get out there and certify, credential, have fun, go out. And like I say on my my other podcast, we're out there and finding the others. So share these ideas with your peers and let's talk about it. There's plenty of meetups right now. There's plenty of people trying to learn new technologies. This is great stuff. So reach out, say hi to Ashish for us, and learn about how this product can change your life. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you out there next time. Cheers.